You're tuned in to 22 Crime, where the truth hides in the details. Together we dive into the darkest corners of human nature, exploring the mysteries that have left investigators puzzled and families searching for justice. Because in the world of crime, the truth is never as simple as it seems. With just 22 minutes on the clock, let's dive into today's case and uncover the shocking truth. Today, we'll take a deep dive into a case that forces us to confront the systems designed to protect our most vulnerable, and how they can fail in catastrophic ways. This is the story of Megan Haynes, a registered nurse whose actions turned a place of peace and care into a site of profound betrayal and tragedy. The clock is ticking. Let's uncover the truth behind today's mystery. Viewer discretion is advised. 22 is a true crime podcast that delves into real-life crime stories, which often involve graphic descriptions, sensitive content, and strong language that may not be suitable for all audiences. We strive to present these cases with the utmost respect for the victims and their families. Please note that the content discussed may be distressing or triggering for some listeners. Additionally, all resources and information presented in this podcast are obtained from publicly available internet sources. Listener discretion is strongly advised, and we recommend that only mature audiences proceed with caution. If you are sensitive to such content, please consider watching another video. Stay safe and take care of your mental health. Megan Haynes was born in September 1967 in apartheid-era South Africa, a time of severe racial segregation. As the child of a mixed-race marriage, she faced rejection in a society that saw her identity as an anomaly. Her childhood was marked by turmoil, with an abusive father and a mother who, Megan claimed, favored her lighter-skinned sisters. This sense of isolation followed her into school, where she struggled to fit in, leaving deep emotional scars. Despite her troubled upbringing, Megan pursued a career in nursing, training in South Africa before emigrating to Australia in 2000. By 2001, she was registered as a nurse, but the promise of a fresh start soon gave way to troubling signs. Complaints began surfacing as early as 2005, with allegations of neglect, mishandling patients, and even physical assault. These incidents, compounded by Megan's struggles as a single mother and heavy drinking, painted a picture of a caregiver in crisis. In 2007, her nursing registration was suspended after allegations of improper insulin administration and theft. Despite this, by 2012, Megan successfully reapplied for her registration, facing minimal oversight due to staff shortages. This leniency allowed her to resume work with vulnerable patients, an oversight that would have devastating consequences. Megan's troubled history highlighted systemic gaps in healthcare oversight. While her past does not excuse her later actions, it reveals the failures that allowed her to continue working despite glaring red flags. In the picturesque town of Ballina, New South Wales, lies St. Andrew's Village, a place that seemed to promise everything one could hope for in a nursing home. Surrounded by calm, leafy landscapes and a serene atmosphere, it was designed to be more than just a facility. It was a sanctuary. Here, elderly residents and their families sought comfort in the idea that their loved ones would live out their golden years in safety, dignity, and care. With its clean, well-maintained corridors and smiling staff, St. Andrew's Village presented itself as a haven for the vulnerable. Each resident's room was personalized with photos and mementos, a touch meant to convey that they were more than patients, they were part of a family. Families trusted the facility, confident in its reputation for compassion and competence. But behind the veneer of tranquility, cracks in the foundation were beginning to show. The operational structure of St. Andrew's seemed solid, even meticulous. Wards were divided based on residents' needs, from those who required minimal support to the high-care units where patients with complex medical conditions lived. Strict protocols were in place to safeguard residents and staff alike. After-hours access to the building was heavily restricted. Visitors had to be approved by staff, their movements tracked through swipe card systems or monitored on CCTV. Even the medication room, housing powerful and potentially dangerous drugs, was tightly controlled, accessible only to authorized personnel. On the surface, it seemed foolproof. But the truth was far more unsettling. Like many aged care facilities, St. Andrews was quietly battling a storm brewing behind closed doors. Staffing shortages were a constant challenge, with overburdened employees stretching themselves thin to cover shifts. Administrative pressures added another layer of strain, leading to lapses in oversight. The security systems, while effective on paper, couldn't compensate for the human vulnerabilities within the institution. And it was through these gaps that a sense of safety turned into something far more sinister. For families, St. Andrews was a promise. But for those inside, the reality was something far more fragile. The very systems meant to protect its residents would soon prove tragically inadequate, as trust within the facility began to erode, and the shadow of tragedy crept ever closer. May 9, 2014, began like any other evening at St. Andrews Village in Ballina, New South Wales. Residents, including 82-year-old Marie Dara and 77-year-old Isabella Spencer, followed their nightly routines, settling into the quiet comfort of the nursing home. Megan Haynes, the registered nurse on duty, moved through her shift, the weight of her responsibilities apparent but unremarkable to those around her. But beneath the surface, something far darker was brewing. Earlier that day, Megan had been confronted with formal complaints from several residents, including Marie and Isabella. These complaints accused her of neglect, cruelty, and rough handling, allegations that cut to the core of her role as a caregiver. What made this situation even more volatile was a critical administrative error. Megan wasn't just informed of the complaints but was also given the names of the complainants. This breach of protocol turned an already tense situation into a powder keg. Witnesses later recalled that Megan's demeanor shifted after the confrontation. Her usual demeanor gave way to something cold, distant, and calculating. Some said it was as if she were steeling herself for something. What no one could have predicted was the horrifying series of events about to unfold. As the quiet hours of the night stretched on, Megan Haynes crossed a line from neglect to calculated murder. Using her access to the medication room and her detailed medical knowledge, she prepared lethal doses of insulin. Insulin, a drug meant to save lives, became a silent and deadly weapon in Megan's hands. In high doses, it causes a precipitous drop in blood sugar, leading to seizures, unconsciousness, and death if not treated immediately. Megan's choice of insulin was chillingly deliberate. Its effects, though devastating, can be difficult to trace in non-diabetic patients. She knew this, and she used it to her advantage, masking her intentions under the guise of routine medical care. Her plan unfolded methodically, the premeditated nature of her actions leaving no room for doubt. Between midnight and 1 a.m., and again between 4 o'clock and 5 a.m., Megan struck. The hallways of St. Andrews Village were silent, the residents asleep. During these critical windows, Megan administered the fatal injections to both Marie Dara and Isabella Spencer. The rest of the staff, occupied with other duties, noticed nothing amiss. Megan moved through the night with an unnerving calm, showing no outward signs of distress or hesitation. By morning, the facade of normalcy shattered. At 6:50 a.m., staff began their rounds. When they entered Marie Dara's room, they were met with an alarming sight. Marie lay unresponsive, her breathing shallow and labored. Emergency protocols were initiated, but it was too late. At 11:30 a.m., Marie was pronounced dead. Moments later, a similar scene unfolded in Isabella Spencer's room. Like Marie, Isabella was found unresponsive in her bed. Resuscitation efforts failed. At 11:50 a.m., Isabella passed away, just 20 minutes after Marie. The cause of death for both women was soon determined: severe hypoglycemia induced by dangerously high doses of insulin. But there was something peculiar: neither woman was diabetic. They had no medical need for insulin, and its presence in their systems immediately raised suspicions. The deaths of Marie and Isabella sent shockwaves through St. Andrew's village. Staff and residents were gripped by grief and disbelief. The families of the two women were devastated, betrayed by the very institution they had trusted to protect their loved ones. This was not a case of natural causes. This was something far more sinister. The deaths of Marie Dara and Isabella Spencer sent shockwaves through St. Andrew's village and the quiet community of Ballina. Two beloved residents, gone within hours of each other under circumstances that raised more questions than answers. Both women were non-diabetic, yet autopsies revealed something chilling: sky-high levels of insulin in their systems. This single, damning discovery shifted the focus from tragedy to something far more sinister: foul play. Detectives and forensic experts swarmed the nursing home, determined to unravel the truth. Their first stop was the medication room, a place meant to be tightly controlled, its contents safeguarded for the well-being of the vulnerable. Each staff member's access was logged through keycard swipes, and the logs quickly revealed a troubling pattern. Megan Haynes was the only person who accessed the medication room during the critical hours when the fatal injections occurred. The forensic investigation painted an incriminating picture. Experts confirmed that both Marie and Isabella had been injected with lethal doses of insulin, amounts far exceeding what any patient could safely receive. The drug worked swiftly, plunging their blood sugar to fatal lows, inducing hypoglycemic comas. The choice of insulin wasn't random. Megan, with her intimate knowledge of its effects, knew precisely how to weaponize it, while hoping its traces would go unnoticed in non-diabetic patients. But the concentrations found in their bodies told a story Megan couldn't erase. As investigators dug deeper, more damning evidence emerged. Syringes consistent with those used for insulin injections were retrieved from medical waste bins. While no fingerprints directly linked Megan to the syringes, their timing and placement aligned perfectly with her shifts, and with the hours she had been alone on the ward. It was a pattern that investigators could not ignore. Witness testimonies began to piece together a night filled with ominous signs. Several staff members recalled seeing Megan near the victims' rooms at odd hours, times when most residents were fast asleep, and routine checks were minimal. One colleague would later describe her demeanor that night as eerily composed, detached, almost as though she were carrying out a plan. Even surviving residents came forward with chilling accounts. One resident, Marjorie Patterson, vividly remembered waking up in the middle of the night to find Megan in her room, administering an unfamiliar medication. Though nothing further happened to Marjorie that night, the encounter left her unsettled, and in hindsight, it became a key detail that placed Megan at the center of the investigation. But the night of the murders was only part of the story. As authorities dug deeper into Megan Haynes' past, a troubling pattern began to emerge. Former colleagues recounted unsettling conversations where Megan spoke about insulin in unnerving ways, hinting at its lethal potential. The most chilling revelation came from a former romantic partner who came forward with a disturbing claim. He recounted how, in 2009, Megan had boasted about knowing how to commit the perfect murder using insulin, confident it would be nearly impossible to trace. When confronted with the mounting evidence, Megan denied any wrongdoing. She insisted she had no memory of administering insulin to either victim, and dismissed past comments about the drug as misunderstood jokes. But her denials could not withstand the sheer force of the case against her. The forensic findings, witness testimonies, and her own disturbing history left little doubt about her culpability. On July 15, 2014, Megan Haynes was formally charged with the murders of Marie Dara and Isabella Spencer. The news was met with a mixture of relief and heartbreak. For the victims' families, it was a step toward justice, though it could never heal the wounds left by such a devastating betrayal. Megan was denied bail, deemed a danger to the community, and remained in custody as the case moved toward trial. The trial of Megan Haynes began in 2016, nearly 2 years after the shocking deaths of Marie Dara and Isabella Spencer. The case had already gripped the public's attention, with headlines capturing the chilling betrayal of trust at a nursing home that was supposed to provide safety and care. On the first day of the trial, the courtroom was packed. Family members of the victims, reporters, and concerned community members all gathered, their faces a mix of anticipation and sorrow. This was more than a trial, it was a quest for justice. The stakes were monumental. The prosecution sought to prove beyond reasonable doubt that Megan Haynes had deliberately and coldly murdered 2 of her most vulnerable patients. The defense aimed to cast doubt, emphasizing the absence of direct physical evidence tying Megan to the crime. The courtroom became a battleground, where every piece of evidence and every word of testimony would shape the outcome. The prosecution wasted no time delivering a powerful opening statement. They painted Megan Haynes as a caregiver who had betrayed her sacred duty, her actions fueled by anger and frustration after learning about complaints lodged against her by Marie and Isabella. The picture they painted was chilling. A nurse who, instead of protecting life, had used her knowledge and position to end it. At the heart of the prosecution's case was the forensic evidence. Medical experts testified that the insulin levels found in Marie and Isabella were not just fatal, but impossibly high, levels that could not have been administered accidentally. Neither woman was diabetic, and their medical records confirmed they had no need for insulin. The prosecution argued that only someone with access to the tightly secured medication room and the expertise to administer such a lethal dose could have carried out the crime. All signs pointed to Megan. Key witnesses bolstered this narrative. Colleagues recalled Megan's unusual behavior on the night of the murders, her unexplained presence near the victims' rooms at odd hours, and her unsettling composure. One coworker shared a chilling anecdote about Megan casually discussing insulin's potential as a lethal weapon, a revelation that sent ripples through the courtroom. The prosecution also highlighted her troubling history of neglect and misconduct, painting a picture of a caregiver who had long been unfit for her role. The most gut-wrenching moments of the trial came from the victim impact statements. Marie Dara's daughter described her mother's vibrant spirit, now forever silenced. Through tears, she recounted Marie's complaints about Megan's cruel and dismissive behavior in her final days. Isabella Spencer's brother spoke of his family's devastation, struggling to understand how someone they trusted to care for Isabella could instead bring her harm. Their words hung heavy in the courtroom, a stark reminder of the human cost of Megan's actions. The defense faced an uphill battle. They leaned heavily on the lack of direct evidence, pointing out that no fingerprints or surveillance footage tied Megan directly to the fatal injections. They suggested that the deaths could have been the result of an accident, or even another staff member's actions. Megan herself took the stand, proclaiming her innocence. She portrayed herself as a scapegoat, unfairly targeted in a system plagued by understaffing and administrative chaos. Character witnesses testified on Megan's behalf, describing her as a professional and dedicated nurse. But under cross-examination, the prosecution dismantled this narrative, highlighting her history of patient complaints, disciplinary actions, and troubling comments about insulin. The case was handed to the jury after weeks of intense testimony, forensic analysis, and emotional accounts. Deliberations were tense, and the courtroom was silent as the jury returned with their verdict. The foreperson rose, the words cutting through the tension. Guilty on all charges. Megan Haynes was convicted of the murders of Marie Dara and Isabella Spencer. The judge's remarks during sentencing were unflinching, condemning Megan's actions as calculated and premeditated, a gross abuse of power and a betrayal of trust. Megan was sentenced to 36 years in prison, with eligibility for parole after 27 years. Throughout the proceedings, Megan remained cold and emotionless, a stark contrast to the visible relief and grief displayed by the victims' families. Outside the courtroom, Marie's and Isabella's families spoke to the press. Their words reflected a bittersweet mix of relief that justice had been served, and sorrow for the lives that had been taken too soon. "No sentence can bring our mother back," Marie's daughter said through tears. "But at least we know she didn't suffer in silence." The trial of Megan Haynes became more than just a case against one individual. It was a wake-up call for the entire elder care system. It exposed glaring vulnerabilities, from inadequate oversight to failures in addressing complaints, and sparked urgent conversations about reform. For the families and the community of Ballina, it was a sobering reminder of the need for vigilance in protecting society's most vulnerable. Megan's conviction brought justice for Marie Dara and Isabella Spencer, but it also left an indelible scar. The tragedy of their deaths and the betrayal they suffered will not be forgotten, a chilling reminder of how misplaced trust can lead to unimaginable harm. Thank you so much for listening all the way through. If you've made it to this point, drop a comment with the word "done," and we'll give you a personal shout-out to show our appreciation. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive in this murder and media frenzy. It was as fascinating for us to create as we hope it was for you to hear. If you found this episode thought-provoking, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. We also invite you to join our YouTube channel, where you can get early access to our content, have your questions answered directly, and enjoy exclusive members-only content. We'd love to know what you think about this case. Was justice truly served? Share your opinions in the comments below. We're always eager to hear your thoughts. For those wanting to explore more on true crime, we've included Amazon affiliate links to some of the books we referenced in our researches. Purchasing through the link won't cost you anything extra, but it will support the channel and help us continue bringing you more content. If you're craving even more, consider joining our Patreon community. As a member, you'll get access to the full script of this episode, exclusive book summaries, and even the complete set of images featured in this case, available for purchase in our Patreon store. This has been 22 Crime. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe.